Attention all vessels in Oman Sea. This is Iranian Super Navy.
Iran has abruptly rejected a second round of US-mediated talks, calling Washington's terms excessive demands and signaling a sharp diplomatic rupture. As reported, Tehran's decision comes amid continued US naval blockade actions, reinforcing its position that negotiations cannot proceed under pressure. The move marks a decisive shift, with diplomacy stalling at a critical moment in an already fragile regional environment.
Well, look. First of all, as of now that I am at your service, we do not have a plan for the next round of negotiations. No decision has been made in this regard. The very act of a naval blockade and blocking a country's ports, according to the definition of aggression in the United Nations General Assembly resolution, which is a consensus document accepted by all countries, constitutes an act of aggression. In several situations, their behavior is truly not compatible with their words, and it only intensifies the justified suspicion of Iranians regarding the intentions of the United States throughout this entire process.
According to Iranian officials, the proposed framework lacked balance, with repeated changes and unrealistic conditions undermining trust. As reported, Tehran conveyed its refusal through intermediaries, emphasizing that no meaningful progress can occur without a fair and consistent approach. The rejection underscores deepening mistrust, effectively halting momentum built during earlier rounds of indirect negotiations.
We did not start this war. On both occasions, in Khordad and in Esfahan 1404, we acted in defense of Iran's integrity and declared that as long as Iran's interests require it, we will continue to defend ourselves. Without a doubt, if the United States or the Zionist regime commit any new act of adventurism, the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran will certainly have full readiness to defend the country.
The United States, as reported, had pushed for sweeping commitments, including long-term restrictions tied to Iran's nuclear program and broader strategic concessions. Tehran, however, viewed these terms as disproportionate, framing them as barriers rather than pathways to agreement. This divergence has now culminated in a full breakdown of the second round before it could formally begin.
The other side constantly shifts the blame game toward Iran. Instead of admitting, which of course we cannot expect, its own faults, it conceals its own shortcomings and accuses Iran of violating the ceasefire. In other words, in response to an understanding in which one part was the ceasefire in Lebanon and another part was Iran's fulfillment of its commitments regarding the Strait of Hormuz under the Nowruz Farvardin understanding, we saw that the United States insisted on bad faith and violating the ceasefire. All of this is evidence that the United States apparently has no real seriousness in the diplomatic process.
Despite Iran's refusal, United States officials have indicated they will proceed with preparations for talks in Islamabad, maintaining diplomatic readiness. As reported, this includes advanced teams and logistical deployments, signaling that Washington is keeping channels open even as tensions rise and uncertainty clouds the negotiation process. The collapse of talks comes against the backdrop of heightened confrontation, including ongoing maritime pressures in the Strait of Hormuz. As reported, the diplomatic breakdown raises the escalation, with the risk of a return to full-scale conflict now increasingly present as both sides remain entrenched in their positions.
US Navy warship transiting in the vicinity for a report and Oman Sea. This is Sabah Navy. Last morning.